The stale, metallic scent of recycled air filled the lungs of Adrian Walker as he made his rounds. He was patrolling the winding corridors of Gaia 2, his boots clicking a steady rhythm against the slick, polished floor. The sound reverberated through the otherwise empty diplomatic wing. Strips of bioluminescent lighting pulsed softly, a gentle blue glow that cast complex shadows on the decorated walls. Another thrilling night in paradise, he muttered, adjusting the stunner at his hip. Through a massive viewing portal to his left, the swirling atmospheric nebulae painted the void in shades of amber and violet. Gigantic cargo haulers drifted by like mechanical leviathans, their running lights piercing the eternal twilight. His wrist communicator chimed. "Walker, we've got a situation in Diplomatic Suite 17. Priority 1. Adrian suppressed a groan. Priority 1 usually meant some high-ranking envoy had misplaced their access card or spotted a suspicious cleaning drone. What's the nature of the problem? Unknown. The diplomat requested immediate security presence. Keep it discreet. When isn't it? He thought as he altered his course, heading toward the central lift. The debt to Star Corp wasn't going to pay itself, but sometimes he missed the simplicity of fixing engines in the outer colonies. At least machines made sense. The lift deposited him on the diplomatic level, where the station's extravagance was in full display. Real wood panels lined the walls, and precisely maintained earth flora filled the terrariums. The air here was different, a blend of delicate exotic perfumes and a carefully curated atmosphere, instead of the metallic sterility below. The door to Suite 17 slid open before he could announce himself. A woman stood in the doorway, her posture radiating authority. Her figure, especially prominent in a fitted gown with a plunging neckline, was slightly distracting. Her dark hair cascaded in perfect waves over her shoulders, and her face exuded a mix of warmth and an unapproachable self-assurance. Officer Walker, her voice was soft but carried a hint of command. "I am Lyra Zeralia." "Thank you for coming so quickly." Adrian instinctively straightened. "What seems to be the problem?" She glanced down the empty corridor and gestured him inside with a subtle motion, leaning slightly forward. "Perhaps we should discuss this in private." The room beyond the threshold was practically a palace. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of Naria's ethereal cloudscape. The walls were adorned with works of art whose value Adrian couldn't even begin to estimate. Lyra gestured toward an elegant couch. "Please, have a seat." "I'm on duty." Of course, she gracefully lowered herself into a neighboring chair, her movements exuding the poise of royalty. "But this matter requires delicacy, and your understanding." Adrian frowned, noting the tension in her tone. "What's the issue?" Lyra looked at him, her green eyes glowing faintly as if with their own light. "You see, my people sometimes require biological assistance." Adrian's hand instinctively moved to his stunner. "Medical personnel?" "No," she waved her hands quickly, her voice faltering. "It's not dangerous, at least not for you, but the situation is unusual." He kept his gaze fixed on her, searching for signs of a joke or deception. "What kind of assistance?" She stood nervously, smoothing the folds of her dress. "Forgive my bluntness, but I need someone to help me with milking." Adrian blinked. "Excuse me, what?" "I understand this may sound strange to a human," she attempted a smile, "but the physiology of my species requires periodic relief. Normally, this would be handled by specialized assistants, but diplomatic restrictions have made them unavailable." "And you decided I'm suited for this role?" His voice grew cautious. "You are perfect for it." Her tone was firm, but her gaze betrayed a hint of nervousness. "It will take little time, and I am willing to compensate you generously." "And if I refuse?" "Then I risk serious damage to my health." She hesitated for a moment, and to the diplomatic negotiations as well. Adrian pondered her words, weighing the implications. "No hidden side effects?" She smiled, and there was more sincerity in that smile than he expected. "Only temporary relief, perhaps even enjoyment." "This is sounding stranger by the second." "I know, but please believe me, this is a matter of necessity." Adrian sighed. Fine, but this stays strictly between us. Lyra visibly relaxed, her face lighting up with a smile. You won't regret it. I really hope not, he stood, shaking his head, but if this turns out to be a joke. I wouldn't dare. She stepped closer, her grace almost hypnotic. Shall we begin? What a life, Adrian thought, realizing his reality was about to take a far stranger turn than he had ever anticipated. Adrian stood frozen as Lyra approached, her steps deliberate, yet carrying a hint of urgency. Despite her composed demeanor, he could see a faint blush on her cheeks, a subtle indication that the situation embarrassed her just as much as it baffled him. Let me explain, she began, gesturing toward a sleek console that emerged from the wall with a gentle hum. Holographic diagrams flickered to life, displaying what appeared to be an anatomical breakdown of her species. My people produce an excess of vital energy during periods of high stress or prolonged diplomacy. If this energy isn't released, it builds up and begins to destabilize our neural pathways. Right, Adrian muttered, crossing his arms. And this release involves, it's entirely non-invasive, Lyra assured him, her voice softening, but it requires someone to extract the, let's call it a serum from specialized glands. Normally, we have trained medics for this, but, well, politics. Adrian raised an eyebrow. Politics prevents you from milking yourself? Lyra let out a frustrated sigh, though he caught the slightest twitch of amusement at the corner of her lips. It's not something we can perform effectively on ourselves. The process requires a partner to help stabilize the energy transfer. Stabilize? Who? Adrian glanced at the diagrams again. So I'm essentially your emergency backup? Her expression softened, and for a moment, she looked almost vulnerable. Yes, and as much as I wish I didn't have to ask, you're my only option. He let out a long breath, scratching the back of his neck. All right, let's just get this over with. Lyra's relief was palpable. Thank you, Officer Walker. Please, follow me. She led him to a recessed area of the suite where a chair, more like a high-tech recliner, waited. As Adrian settled into it, Lyra activated a series of controls. The room dimmed, and the holographic diagrams now projected onto a nearby wall, showing a live readout of her vitals. This might feel a little strange, she said, rolling up the sleeve of her dress to reveal faintly glowing veins on her forearm. The process requires a slight connection to your bioelectrical field. Strange is becoming my new normal, Adrian muttered, watching as she retrieved a sleek handheld device that pulsed softly in her grip. Lyra moved closer, the glow from her veins intensifying. I need you to remain as still as possible. The more relaxed you are, the smoother the transfer. Adrian nodded, though his pulse quickened as she leaned over him. Her scent, something floral yet otherworldly, filled the air. The device in her hand emitted a gentle hum as she positioned it near his arm, just above the veins. As it made contact, a wave of warmth spread through him, radiating from the point of contact and flowing throughout his body. It was soothing, almost hypnotic. Is this normal? He asked, his voice softer than he intended. Lyra smiled faintly, her gaze focused on the device. Completely. You're experiencing the energy transfer. It's a feedback loop, your body is helping regulate the process. The warmth intensified, and Adrian became acutely aware of her proximity. Her glow had spread, illuminating her face and casting delicate shadows across her features. Her expression was one of concentration, but there was a softness to her eyes that caught him off guard. This doesn't hurt, right? He asked, suddenly aware of how close their faces were. She shook her head, her voice almost a whisper. Not at all. In fact, most find it pleasant. Adrian cleared his throat, forcing himself to look away. Great. So how long does this take? Not long, Lyra said, though her voice carried a hint of breathlessness. The glow surrounding her intensified, and the device emitted a series of soft chimes. There, almost done. The warmth receded slowly, leaving Adrian feeling oddly refreshed. Lyra stepped back, her glow dimming to its usual soft radiance. She looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and something else he couldn't quite place. You've been incredibly helpful, she said, her voice steadier now. I owe you more than I can express. Adrian stood, stretching slightly. Just part of the job, I guess, though I have to admit, this was unique.